Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Nick. Welcome to Governance Lab, where we study modern business leadership. Today we're discussing one of the biggest questions in modern business. Is ESG a cost or a competitive advantage? This question is shaping the future of global industries. Let's find out what the truth is. Imagine two manufacturing companies. Both produce similar products. Both operate in the same industry with 500 employees. One company believes ESG is simply another business expense. The other company treats ESG as a long-term business strategy. 5 years later, one company struggles to retain customers, while the other wins international contracts and attracts better talent. This forward-thinking company secures lower financing costs and earns greater customer trust in the global market. Both companies spent money. Only one created long-term value. Is ESG really a cost or an investment? Several years ago, I attended a management budget meeting. As management reviewed the annual budget, the discussion reached ESG. Someone immediately asked, "Why are we spending so much money on ESG?" It sounded like a reasonable question. Training employees costs money. Improving workplace safety costs money. Preparing sustainability reports costs money. Everything appeared an expense. Then one senior executive asked a different question. What will it cost us if we don't invest in ESG? The room became silent. The discussion immediately shifted from cost to business risk in our long-term plan. We started talking about customer requirements, regulatory compliance, workplace accidents, investor confidence, supplier reliability, and business reputation. At that moment, ESG stopped being an environmental discussion. It became a business strategy for our survival. One of the biggest misconceptions about ESG is that companies only see its visible costs. They see solar panels, employee training, safety equipment, consultants, audits, and complex carbon reporting. Naturally, many business owners conclude that ESG only increases operating expenses. However, every business decision has two types of costs: the cost of action and the cost of inaction. Most companies calculate the first, very few calculate the second. Let's think about this deeply. What happens if a workplace accident stops production and harms your reputation? What happens if your largest customer requires ESG compliance and your company cannot qualify? What happens if weak governance results in fraud or financial losses? What happens if talented employees leave because your workplace culture is poor? Ignoring ESG doesn't remove these costs. It simply delays them until they become much larger. The real question is not whether ESG costs money. Can your business afford the cost of doing nothing? Let's compare two manufacturing companies and examine how their choices led to completely different outcomes. Company views ESG as a necessary paperwork. Management postpones sustainability initiatives because they see no immediate return. Safety training is limited. Supplier assessments are weak. Environmental monitoring is inconsistent. Everything seems acceptable until their largest international customer suddenly introduces new mandatory ESG requirements. Company A cannot demonstrate responsible business practices. The contract is awarded to another supplier. Now consider Company B. Several years earlier, management invested in governance. They strengthened procurement procedures, improved workplace safety, developed employees, evaluated suppliers consistently, enhanced environmental management. When customers introduced stricter ESG requirements, Company B was already prepared. Instead of losing customers, they gained market share. Both companies spent money. Only one transformed that spending into a competitive advantage. The difference lies in one simple principle. An expense disappears after the money is spent. An investment continues creating value. Consider workplace safety. Safety equipment costs money. Training costs money. Risk assessments cost money. But they also reduce accidents, lower insurance premiums, reduce production downtime. This will significantly improve employee morale and greatly increase customer confidence in your brand. Governance works the same way. Strong governance reduces fraud, improves supplier performance. It also strengthens executive decision-making and builds strong investor confidence for the future. Good governance is almost invisible when everything works well, but when governance is absent, the consequences become very expensive. Successful companies don't ask, "How much does ESG cost?" They ask, "How much business value does ESG create?" How can organizations transform ESG into a competitive advantage? Here are 5 practical recommendations. First, always connect every single ESG initiative directly to a clear business objective. Second, focus on measuring real business outcomes instead of simply reporting activities. Third, actively involve every single department, and not only the sustainability team. Fourth, strengthen governance because governance is the foundation of ESG. Finally, communicate ESG using the language of business. Talk about profitability, risk management, and long-term growth. When ESG becomes part of business strategy, it stops being a reporting exercise and starts creating competitive advantage. Remember these 5 lessons. ESG is not an environmental project. ESG is a business strategy. Every business decision has both the cost of action and the cost of inaction. Strong governance creates long-term value. Companies that delay ESG often pay much higher costs later. The purpose of ESG is to build stronger, more resilient, and more profitable businesses. Many companies ask, how much does ESG cost? I believe that's the wrong question. The better question is, how much value will ESG create over the next 5, 10, or 20 years? Companies that see ESG as a cost compete on today's prices. Companies that see ESG as a strategy compete for tomorrow's markets. If someone in your organization still believes ESG is only a business expense, share this episode with them. Subscribe to Governance Lab for practical insights on procurement, governance, ESG compliance, and business leadership. I'm Dr. Nick. Thank you for watching.